They called him the filibuster. He wanted to build an empire. His dream was built on sand and blood. Imagine, if you will, the booming, confident America of the mid-1850s. It was an era of manifest destiny, a nation bursting at the seams, looking west and south with an insatiable appetite for land and influence. But one man looked south, deep into Central America, and saw not just land, but an opportunity to create a new, slave-holding, English-speaking American dominion. His name was William Walker. Born in Nashville, Tennessee in 1824, Walker was no swashbuckling rogue from the start. He was a child prodigy, a trained physician by 19, who dabbled in journalism and law. He was slight of build, intense, and possessed a chilling, almost hypnotic charisma. He was, by all accounts, a genius fueled by a messianic complex. Walker's obsession wasn't with gold, but with power and the expansion of the peculiar institution of slavery, which he passionately believed was the natural order. He first tried his hand in Baja California, leading a small band of mercenaries in 1853 to declare the Republic of Lower California, with himself as president. It lasted a pitiful 2 months before he was chased out by the Mexican army. This failure didn't deter him. It only refined his technique. His grand stage, however, was Nicaragua. In 1855, Nicaragua was a political mess. Two rival factions, the Legitimistas, pro-slavery, supported by powerful American interests like Cornelius Vanderbilt, and the Democrats, anti-slavery, but more concerned with control over the lucrative transit route across Nicaragua to California, were locked in a brutal civil war. Walker saw his opening. He convinced a group of investors, largely financed by the powerful railroad and shipping magnate Cornelius Vanderbilt, that he could stabilize the country and guarantee Vanderbilt's lucrative transit monopoly if he were given a military command. In May 1855, Walker sailed from San Francisco with just 56 battle-hardened filibusters, mercenaries, adventurers, and Southern sympathizers. This tiny force was an absurdity against a nation-state, yet Walker operated with ruthless efficiency. He captured the city of Rivas, then Granada, using tactics that were both brilliant and barbaric. The common Nicaraguan soldiers, used to drawn-out skirmishes, were terrified by the disciplined, relentless American volunteers. Walker didn't just defeat armies, he instilled a psychological terror. Within a year, the warring factions were shattered and Walker declared himself the president of Nicaragua in July 1856. This was the high watermark of the astonishing American invasion. Walker, now the self-proclaimed ruler of a sovereign nation, immediately set about making it his nation. His first act as president? He reinstated slavery, despite the fact that Nicaragua had abolished it decades earlier. His decree was clear. All existing land contracts were void unless sanctioned by him, and he opened the door for massive American land acquisitions, effectively planning a land grab masquerading as governance. But this dream empire had a fatal flaw. It relied on the support of the very people it sought to conquer and the continued tolerance of the United States government. President Franklin Pierce, an expansionist himself, initially recognized Walker's regime, but the reality of a petty, slave-owning dictator running a Central American state backed by a private army soon became an international embarrassment. Moreover, Walker had the bad luck to cross his initial patron, Cornelius Vanderbilt. When Walker's government tried to seize Vanderbilt's transit company assets, the shipping baron turned against him, using his infinite influence to choke Walker's supply lines and lobby Washington for his removal. The tides turned swiftly. Walker's attempts to consolidate power were met with a formidable coalition of his former enemies, the Democrats, the Legitimistas, and, critically, military support from Costa Rica, El Salvador, and Honduras, who formed the United Armies of Central America to expel the American interloper. Walker, trapped and besieged in the capital, saw his forces dwindle from a few thousand to a few hundred. His last stand was a desperate retreat. In April 1857, cornered and out of options, he surrendered to a U.S. Navy captain, Horace A. Lee, who shipped him back to New York. The American public, initially fascinated by the gray-eyed man of destiny, was now largely disgusted by the brutality and the flagrant violation of sovereignty. Walker was greeted as a bizarre celebrity, even as the government quickly tried to distance themselves from him.
But William Walker was not finished. He immediately launched his second invasion. He charmed his way back into the good graces of Southern financiers and sailed out again in late 1857, attempting to land in an area of the U.S. that still supported him. He was captured by the U.S. military before he could even land a single man and was jailed. He was released, and he launched his third invasion attempt in 1860, this time targeting Honduras, aiming to make it his new base before returning to Nicaragua. This final attempt was a disaster from the start. Within weeks, he was captured by the British Royal Navy and handed over to the Honduran authorities. The end came quickly and ignominiously. Tried by a military court in Trujillo, Honduras, in September 1860, Walker offered no defense. He was found guilty of piracy and waging war against a friendly state. He was blindfolded, marched before a firing squad, and executed at dawn. His last request was to be shot in the chest, not the head, so that his body would look better for those who might one day retrieve it. The man who briefly crowned himself king of a nation, whose ambition rivaled that of the Caesars, died alone, abandoned by his backers, at the age of 36. His extraordinary, fact-filled, and horrifying story of an American adventurer who used a private army to carve out a slave state in Central America, only to be undone by a shipping magnate and a coalition of his terrified neighbors, is one of the most unbelievable and least taught chapters of American expansionism. William Walker, the filibuster president, was a ghost in the machine of manifest destiny, a true story so wild it reads like fiction.